Welcome into another episode of the Cloaks and Capes podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Robbie Landis, and I'm not falling for any of the D&D propaganda that's been going on out there. And along with me, as always, is Kali Scales, who might fall for some of it, but we'll get to that in just a second. Our guest today, who you might know from TikTok as DiceWhisperer, Laura, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, I bet you understand what I mean by the whole D&D propaganda thing. Kali is not as much into the social media part of everything as I have been. But on TikTok, on Shorts, the current, trying to grab all the views is basically like a very short, like 5-second clip with like, oh, I'm not falling for the D&D propaganda. Then you like list off a bunch of stuff, like you only need one dice set or all tieflings are hot, like, that type of stuff. So people have to like read all through it, but they've really watched it like 7 times as a result.
Right.
No, I'm confused because one of those things you said is true and the other is false.
Look, depending on who it's there's all sorts of propaganda out there. That's why I said I'm not falling for any of it.
But all tieflings are hot.
I mean, yeah, because of fire and stuff, right?
No, not because of fire.
So, Kelly, what would your D&D propaganda be? What's like the thing that no matter what game you're ever in, like this will never change and nobody can convince you otherwise.
I will always tell my players we're going to have less NPCs this game, and it's never true.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second.
I've never come even close, and as I tell them every time, I didn't lie, I failed.
Laura, what about you? What's your D&D propaganda?
I would say mine is that the dice are cursed.
You know who else falls for that propaganda?
Like, can anyone disagree with that?
Well,
no.
Well, my favorite retort to that is it came from Zach the Bold in one of his skits, and it's that the curse isn't in the dice; they're in your hands.
Okay, then my hands hate me.
Yeah. I mean, you've been doing okay recently. You somehow gave your curse to me.
I did. I do seem to have passed it. On the Friday game, I'm going to tell you my curse has held true in all my other games.
So
but
there's just
in the
something,
Friday game, it's okay.
somehow you channel that into me, and I'm not about it.
It's rough. Welcome to my world.
So, Laura, one of the things that we like to do
Wait a minute, Robbie.
Yes, what?
What's yours?
Mine has to do with the fact that if you're not using gemstone dice, then you're not doing it right. Once you use a set of gemstone dice, you will never want to go back to resin.
Oh.
I disagree, but fair.
Kali. Well, to be fair, you are changing dice so often trying to get away from the curse that like you wouldn't know a good set of dice if someone threw them at your head.
My first gemstone dice now lives on the shelf of shame after it murdered 2 of my characters.
You're the problem, though, not the dice.
Yeah.
I don't own any gemstone dice. Can I still be here?
Oh, of course you can.
Oh, okay.
You don't own any gemstone dice yet.
Yet.
They're
in the mail.
One of our new favorite traditions, though, that we like to do is whenever we have a guest on before we start the show proper, I asked you the other week about like one of your, I don't remember if it was your first or your favorite character. Hyacinth, I believe, was the name.
Oh.
And so we created...
One of my go-to names for a character. I love that.
We created a magic item inspired by Hyacinth. So this is Hyacinth's corsage. This is a
by
very
we,
rare...
he means him.
Me, yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you for not,
No, I'm not going to sit here and take your credit.
I don't mind. Like everything I say we, because we're like a, we
were a team.
Here,
but no, this was you. Yeah. You made it.
Yep. So it's a very rare, wondrous item that requires attunement. The description is that these magical flowers are usually attached to a jacket, a shoulder strap, or worn in your hair. The flower comes from the Feywild and have been further enchanted for those who want to be larger than life and enrapture the attention of all those who lay eyes upon them. So your charisma increases by 2 to a maximum of 20, and it has 2 properties on it. The first is called Keeping Up Appearances. You can take a bonus action to change the style, color, and apparent quality of a willing creature's outfit if the garments are non-magical. Weight of the garments don't change, regardless of their appearance. They can't be anything but what they are, so you can't turn a pair of pants into a shirt. Lasts for 1 hour, and you can't give them magical properties, but they could appear magical. So it's essentially like the Cloak of Many Fashions, but it's a spell you can use on any garments.
Wow.
And then Voice of an Idol, which is bard only. Use a bonus action to summon a magical megaphone for 1 minute. While holding this megaphone, any spells you cast that have a verbal component gain a +2 bonus to their spell attack or spell save DC, and once used, this property cannot be used again until the next dawn.
This is amazing.
Do a pretty good job nailing the character.
This is amazing. So I just have to say, for the audience, so Hyacinth, and this may actually go over a lot of people's heads because not as many people grew up watching BBC comedies as I did as a kid. She is based on a character called Hyacinth Bouquet from the show Keeping Up Appearances. And it is like, I'm like listening to you and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly, it's perfect. It's amazing. Thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy. One of these days, I'm going to make a magic item for someone. They're going to be like, that's the dumbest thing.
That thing sucks.
Get it out of here. I'm going to be like, Lloyd, can you cut that part out? But today is not that day.
That?
No, this is perfect.
I'm
I
so
can't
glad
wait
that
to
you
try
like it.
and use it.
We actually have a permission slip that we can send you to like fill in to give to. I don't know if you're in any games right now where someone's DMing for you.
Oh,
Yep,
yes.
We'll send you.
We'll
right
fill
along
out.
with that.
We'll give you
That
a doctor's
permission
note for the for the item.
I need it. I need it immediately. We're playing tomorrow night.
There we go.
I need the corsage. Okay.
Dungeon Master slip. Please give this. It's
That's
like
exactly
Ron
what it
Swanson.
is.
She can have whatever item she wants.
I can do whatever I want. Yep.
Yeah.
So for today's topic, we are talking about immersion. Don't break my immersion.
My immersion.
And this is such an interesting topic, I feel, because I think that everyone's opinion on exactly what immersion is, how to keep it, and what constitutes breaking it is different, right? I think whoever you ask, it's going to be just a little bit different. So I think where we're going to start with is, and I didn't put this on here. I'm going to assume that Laura did, but Oxford defines immersion as deep mental involvement. Which, okay, I think in that explanation of it, I think we all probably get pretty immersed. But when it comes to tabletop RPGs, Laura, let's start with you. What do you think about, or if you were to explain to someone immersion when it comes to D&D or tabletop RPGs, how would you explain that?
I would explain it as a conscious suspension of time and reality.
Ooh, that's really
You-
good.
Like, on one level that you're sitting at a table and that it's you, but you have given yourself over to the game and to the story in a way that you are consciously aware that everything else happening outside of you is not to be toyed with in this moment. It has no importance. I love that. And so, that's my definition. In brief, anyway.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of a saying that we used to have when I was in theater. I know this isn't like a unique thing because one of the adults at the time, this is when I was in high school, was one who brought it to us. But this idea of like wiping your feet at the door, not bringing your problems in with you, just focusing on the game. Kali, what does immersion for you feel like at the table?
I think for me, immersion, and it's different if you're DMing or if you're
It is, absolutely,
playing. But for me, immersion at the table is when I am my character for a moment, whether it's in a dialogue sequence or when I'm trying to figure out what's happening in combat. And immersion for me is when I have stopped being the person behind the microphone and I have started being the character, whether it's an NPC I'm playing or my PC.
We talk on here a lot about not just getting lost in your character, right? And how, especially I think back to the metagame episode that we did with Eldritch Pod Blast, and encouraging people to think about their character not just as themselves, but also from a third person perspective, in this idea of just because your character doesn't know something doesn't mean you can't choose to act in a way that allows you to utilize that, right? Does that idea of immersion, of just being your character, do you think that flies in the face of it, that the two of those things are opposed in some way sometimes? Or how do you and this is to both of you as well, how would you handle that idea of staying in character, staying immersed, but still being able to access that outside knowledge?
So I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive to each other. yes, obviously, if you're coming out to speak in third person and say what your character's feeling in the moment, obviously you're returning to being behind the microphone and being out of the character. But in your mind, I think you can still just as easily be right there in the character's mindset. You're just now conveying to the rest of the group what that character's mindset is. You don't have to actually leave the space mentally.
I like that. I think a lot about what does my character reasonably, what would they know? Like, and in terms of that, really thinking about backstory. Sure, there's like basic monsters they might be aware of and things like that, but there also might be things they've never seen before. Maybe they've never seen, just to go back to something we talked about at the top, maybe they've never seen like a kobold. Maybe they've never met a wizard, or they're very rare in their world. And I think that when those things come up in play, it actually gives us an opportunity, not that you have to have figured that out all in advance, but it gives us an opportunity to ask ourselves the question, would I know this? And do I want to know this? And how can that make an even richer story? Because the truth is that if I'm playing a game where I know everything, I don't think that's really fun.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. Like, it's such a difficult line to walk when you start utilizing the phrase "it's what my character would do," because that's always used to justify just doing like the worst, most heinous shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it can be really fun to. I mean, Robbie, you see me do this all the time with Callista. Callista makes some bad choices,
Sure,
from time to time.
Sure.
But always with the idea of, I'm not trying to screw the party over. I'm trying to let Callista learn from folly, because I think folly is interesting. Every hero grows through folly. And yeah, I think it is sometimes okay to step back and go, you know what? My character doesn't know this bit of information that I do. And it's interesting if we use that as a bit of dramatic irony.
I think, because I've only just recently, I say just recently, but we've been playing in a campaign now for like half a year, I think, or longer. But for me, recently, as my bard character, I think when I get really immersed is when things take me by surprise. There was a moment in our campaign where my character was sort of off by themselves, and Kali's character had came up and said anything, and I don't even think you were being mean in any way. I think you were actually extending like an olive branch, but my character's a bitch. And
that's true.
And tried to brush her off, and she kind of just pointed out like that's obviously not the case here. And then me instinctually, like, wasn't what I was planning to do at all. In fact, I felt a little bad about it, because you know when like you really kind of like snap at somebody, you can start to feel the adrenaline kind of starting to pump a little bit, because how are they going to react back? And I kind of just like lashed out, like, you're lying to your sister.
Yeah.
And Kali, who normally like trades barbs back and forth, character just turned and walked away. Like it was just like, you are, and yeah, that's right, and walked away. And
just walked off.
And like just that little moment, even though it was only like maybe 10 seconds long, like when unexpected things like that happen, but I just react in a way that my character would without thinking about it, that's how I know that like I'm really in a moment.
That's so cool. I play, so I DM Curse of Strahd, and I also play Curse of Strahd. I am in concurrently. I'm doing both at the same time. And Hyacinth is my Curse of Strahd character. And you might think that like, well, Laura, you already know Curse of Strahd. Isn't it boring to play it? And no, it's actually not, because I get to play it through Hyacinth's eyes. I did give her a little bit of an advantage. I made her Vistani, so that she would have at least some awareness of what was going on. But largely, like, she is just exploring like anyone else. And she is, oh my gosh, we were playing last night. Hyacinth is such a little minx. On our VTT, there's another character, his name is Duke Blueberry, that Hyacinth really likes, and he wants nothing to do with her. And so
he's a fool.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. But on the VTT, he was moving his character around the camp, and Hyacinth was just following him. Like everywhere he went, she went. And obviously that's not me, right? Obviously, that's not something I would do, but it's so fun to
It's so
put
her.
yourself. It's so her. It's so fun to put herself in those shoes. And it's so fun to allow us to explore in ways that we as human beings would maybe never do. And all in the name of just some laughter and joy and community.
So I love that. I played in Curse of Strahd, and that was my first experience with it. And then I ran my own Curse of Strahd game where I actually made it a sequel to Curse of Strahd, although the players don't realize that until the end of the first act. And at the end of the first act, as they've been taking Irina along, they go to Castle Ravenloft for the dinner with Strahd, and it is revealed that the castle is actually owned by Countess Irina Ravenloft, and it is actually set 700 years after a failed Curse of Strahd game.
No!
Yeah. And so it was this intense betrayal that I got to do to the party because a bunch of them had already played Curse of Strahd before this, so they expected her to be the great ally through the whole game, and she betrayed them and was the BBEG. It was good.
Didn't you also have some people who had done it for the first, like that was their first time, and so when they went to play it with someone else who did it more traditionally,
they
had
very
trouble
confused.
trusting Irina?
Yes, because of course in the book, yeah, she's not at all that. You are supposed to protect her the whole game. But yes, I had a few people who had already played before, and so for them, I wanted to make it feel like it was something new and different and interesting. And yeah, after that first act, things had a big change. But now I'm playing in another Curse of Strahd game, and just like you, I made my character a former knight of Argynvost. She existed in the time of the Knights of Argynvost, but when Strahd invaded, her the lady commander of them put her under a sleep curse, and she slept through until like 700 years later, and she's only just woken again in Barovia. Now the place sucks, so she's dealing with that.
I literally have shivers. That both of those stories are so cool.
Laura, we're gonna end up in a D&D game together. I can already tell this. We live too close together for that not to happen.
You have to come over. I'm like, oh my god.
I'm in.
So this is, by the way, this is a Curse of Strahd episode now. So sorry, we're changing the theme. It's Curse of Strahd.
Look, I have a vampire story too. Once you're done, I'm gonna keep it going. We're gonna do a hat trick here.
So I'm going to Gen Con in a few weeks, first time, and I am playing in Curse of Strahd, Tatiana's version.
Oh.
And all about it's different from I think what you're describing of her like being the BBEG, but more of like, what is this like through the eyes of a woman who is really tormented and has to deal with some, I mean, if we actually put ourselves in the shoes of Irina / Tatiana, holy mackerel.
Oh, like, it's such a sad story.
Totally. And so I'm really looking forward to sort of exploring that angle of it. I could play Curse of Strahd forever. I think we could skin it 1,000 ways and it would be just as amazing.
That we had a whole episode that we did kind of about making a game your own, and that's what makes Curse of Strahd so special, is that it is a really bad story with a really good bare bones that you can grow on and change and make your own. Because if you just run it straight out of the book, bleh.
Full disclosure,
100%.
I've never played Curse of Strahd. I only know what people on this podcast have talked about Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
Robbie, you're fired. What's going on here?
You just fired me from my own show? What?
Get out.
What just happened? My vampire story, all right, fine. It's not a D&D show anymore. It's now a Vampire the Masquerade show.
Another great game.
Where I think I felt the most immersed. And, you with your example, you had mentioned that, you wanted to be a Vishanti so that you had sort of additional knowledge that you might not have otherwise had as a character. When I played Vampire the Masquerade with Aaron Malandry, I didn't know anything about that world. I was brand new to it, nothing about like the mechanics, the system, anything. And I felt so at odds with it or so like, behind everyone else that I needed to turn this into my advantage. So I chose to play a Thin Blood, which is someone who's newly been
brand
turned.
New.
And it's interesting because I know that in Vampire, depending on how old you are, determines how much XP you get to start with and how powerful you are. So it's essentially like starting super weak compared to everybody else who's super powerful. But I kind of leaned into that, and like my character literally had just changed. Like he had been a vampire for so brief a time, and because of the perks that I picked, he didn't even realize that he was one yet. And so when he gets picked up and taken to the Baron, he think like this is a joke what's happening here, right? And they're talking about like, do they even let me and the person who created me, who did so on an accident, live? And so being able to play into that and not worry about the rules and not worry about the lore, just being able to, I guess as Kali had mentioned, be your character and sort of act on impulse is really how I get into it in that way. Combat is difficult, I think, for me to be immersed in as a character, because you're still having to sort of think about things on a very sort of meta and like mechanical level to a certain extent, especially if you use like maps and it's not all just theater of the mind.
Well, Robbie, that's so interesting. First of all, I think I've just had a breakthrough. You're rehired. So
Excellent.
okay,
Can I get a raise while I'm at it?
Yes,
Nice.
immediately.
Yeah, 100% raise.
Damn it.
I played my first vampire game over the winter, and I wasn't as smart as you. I should have played a Thin Blood because I was completely lost in the sauce of how that game operates and runs. I would like to go back to it eventually, but the social combat, speaking of immersion, was so incredibly and unbelievably stressful for me as myself. I was like, I don't think I can play this game. Like, I am like feeling so much anxiety, but I think that was a sign that it was actually being played really well. At least that's what I've heard.
So too. Yes, absolutely. Because like there is that level to it, and when you play with people who are really good at that too, it's not like in D&D where if someone's really good at playing the wizard and you're not so good at whatever you're playing, it just feels like, oh, I'll get there eventually. But when you're kind of playing against people, not like in a PvP sense, but like it's them and you, and they have an advantage both through the game and through this game of social intrigue, it gives you that same feeling that, when you watch, shows or movies that have sort of those old, ancient societies where that if you trip up in the wrong way, like, that's it. You're gone. Yeah, it absolutely is part of that. And I think that is a sign that maybe you were more immersed than you realized you were.
I was. Do you think you are able to be more immersed in that? Like you mentioned combat in D&D, and I totally agree with you. It is hard to stay immersed in combat in D&D, but what did you think about that in Vampire?
I think that I have to give a lot of it to Aaron, our DM, who definitely favors like the narrative and the role play and like the story above mechanics. There's a time I remember where like I wanted to try and do something, and she's like, "All right, how do you do that?" And I'm like looking through my character sheet, trying to like find something, trying to understand that. And she goes, "Fuck the character sheet, just tell me what you do." And first of all, I think DMs that just tell you to just like stop thinking about this as a game. Tell me what you want to do, and then I will help you to do it. You're the real heroes, all right?
Hell yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes, but if you need us to buy one for you, we will. So I think that helps.
It's in our name.
And it is. We have cloaks and capes. And so I think that might be sort of the big thing is when I'm in D&D, if it's a DM who helps to keep the RP going during combat and it doesn't just devolve to, all right, well, we're doing combat now and we're doing math and numbers, it's a lot easier to sort of stay in that moment. So the less that I have to do, really, this is what it comes down to. The less I have to do math, the better I can stay in my character and that I can stay immersed, I think. Speaking of building immersion, though, what about from the two of you? What is it that helps you either... You know what? We've talked about it a lot as players. Let's look at it as DMs now. How do you build immersion as a DM at your table? Because I think the only real like tool that I use that I don't just sort of have naturally with me on me at any time is I like to play music during it, which I think is like hit or miss for some people. Lloyd, our producer, once said that like he didn't used to use the music to begin with, but then there was one episode where I think was just or session, which was just a really good one that happened to have really good music to go along with it, and that was the first time that he had decided to have the music on, and it really like elevated the moment. But what sort of tools or strategies would you recommend to other DMs to use to help build or encourage people to get into that and to immerse themselves?
So here's what I'll say. First of all, doubling down on music, because I think music can elevate a scene so well. I think music can really just set the mood. But I think the double-edged sword of music is that it can also do the opposite. If you're not paying attention to it and the music doesn't fit the scene, it destroys immersion. So I'm of a big belief that if you're going to do music, go all the way with it. Outside of that, I'll tell you what it is for me is I think calling for roles is the biggest immersion breaker. So for me, especially if I'm in a dialogue or a role play moment, I will really go out of my way to not call for a role during it and just let us continue having this back and forth dialogue for as long as possible.
What if it isn't dialogue?
If it's not,
is it because I feel like a lot of the immersion that we've been talking about right now is specifically when you're talking or specifically in dialogue. What if it's a kind of, let's say, an exploration based thing, not really in combat? You know, you're going through a cavern or you're searching for something in an office. You're trying not to get caught. Like, at what point? You know, for me, it's the math. For you, it's roles, but that's also what adds the I don't know if stakes is the right word, but that's how we get the randomness of it, right?
So especially when you're traveling, you do have to have some roles. Like that's how the game works, right? So my take on it is give them periods where they don't have to. So, you know, we're gonna describe where you're at. You're gonna describe for me what you want to do in the place. You know, I'm gonna try and give you a couple things. You know, what does your character hear? What does your character smell? Some things that are gonna build out the scene. And you can still push off doing the roll for a little bit before you finally go, okay, give me a stealth roll to see, you know, were you able to sneak up on this scene without being caught? My advice, I think it still stands, is try and go as long as you can without calling for the roll, because that's the moment where now I'm sitting back at my computer, grabbing some dice and rolling them, and I'm no longer in the moment doing it.
That might be the thing that we are most diametrically
I agree.
Opposed
but we've
on,
always been diametrically opposed on
because that. I do agree on certain types of rolls. Like if I'm having you redo a stealth roll every time, that's dumb. Just I'll keep a stealth roll that you have. Same thing for like a perception check and things like that. But when it comes down to a moment of like whether this fails or succeeds could dramatically alter the course of a scene, I'm going to call for that roll, because otherwise we're just cruising along and what's really happening or what's threatening to upset that balance. Thoughts, Laura?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I love theater, and there are
That's what I dropped out of in college.
Okay, but we're going to go right back there now, Robbie.
No, I mean, like, I went for it. I didn't want to drop out life stuff, but
well,
kind
then
of a theater major.
You'll appreciate this. So there's a lot of really great immersive theater in New York. Anyone who's listening might have heard of something called Sleep No More, which ran for many years. It was on like 6 floors of a warehouse where you literally wandered around watching the characters in motion walk through the building to Macbeth. It was actually totally incredible. And I became very obsessed with learning how to create immersive experiences. This had nothing to do with D&D at all. It just, I wanted to understand it. So I actually went to Broadway to a weekend workshop with some of the folks who put it on. And I was fully out of my element. Let me just put it that way, because I'm not an actor. But one of the exercises they had us do, we did all these crazy things. And Robbie, you probably did a lot of these in theater. One of them is we had to lie on the floor of the stage with our eyes closed. And there were probably 30 of us there. And so we all lay down, and they said, you're going to keep your eyes closed. We're going to play music. You are going to find your partner while staying on the ground. and you are going to create a dance with them. Now, this was really, really intimidating. A lot of these people were professional modern dancers, thank God, because I was not. But so I lied there and I started to use my senses. Like I felt around. I use my nose, like, do I smell perfume this way or cologne this way? When I felt someone's arm, what did that feel like? And then essentially we did this primarily led by the modern dancers. They did this dance that we sort of choreographed together, feeling ourselves moving in rhythm for a few minutes. It was very profound. And the thing that I learned from that, while I don't writhe on the floor and slither around with my adventurers, I learned the importance of, as much as possible, trying to engage all the senses. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to make a lot of use, and this is useful if you do in-person or virtual gaming. I make a lot of use of the sound of my voice and how soft or how loud or how near or far I might appear. In person, you can even do that by walking around the table and whispering to people. I mean, like that, you want to immerse someone, walk up behind them and say something to them softly. Whoa, that's going to really, get things going. Lighting, sound, yes, I think those are great. I have also used immersion before the game even begins. So when I started this current Curse of Strahd campaign, I sent all of it's an in-person game. I sent all of my players invitations in the mail. Everybody got an Is that cool?
It is. It's
so cool.
So it's the one thing that, because I don't play in any, I don't remember the last time that I played in-person tabletop RPGs. It was like back in college, basically.
No.
But it's the one thing that I would want, that I wish that I could do, that I can't really do when you're in like an online game. Like technically I could send things out, but it's expensive. But also if I had an in-person game, I also don't think that my ADHD would let me make something cool to give to everybody. So I don't know that I would do it anyway.
It's fun.
I have a visitor.
We did when we introduced our adventures in Curse of Strahd to these things called dream pastries, which, as you can imagine, it's a pastry, but with special properties.
Sure is.
I actually bought little cakes and brought them onto. You're definitely coming into a game. I can tell you're going to be at my house next week.
Oh, 100%. Invite me, please.
Both of you. But it was like showing them, would you like one of these? They look really good. And they're like, what's wrong? What's wrong with these?
Good question to ask.
I plan on doing that with one of my players, who even got permission from Kali, who is in a relationship with her character. I'm like, do you want a wolf that can talk to you telepathically? And she ran off and asked Kali for permission first. You want to know what gives that wolf telepathy?
Oh, God, I'm terrified.
So they made a change to intellect devourers in 2025. They can steal the brain of more than just humanoids now.
Oh no. Yeah, no. So this player and our characters are dating in game. So yeah, she messages me earlier. She's like, "Would Callista be okay if Bella got a wolf pet?" And I was like, "I think Callista would be very supportive of that." Yeah.
Callista got a skeleton cat. Okay.
Yeah, I got a bone cat. So like, yeah, who am I to talk?
I love that.
Speaking to that exercise you mentioned, though, I've never had to do that one, but a similar one that we did once. I don't know what like it's officially called or whatever, but it was taught to us as "this is a spoon," and basically you get a partner, and the only thing the two of you are allowed to say, "Stop chewing on stuff," is "this is a spoon," but that's not actually what you're saying to them. And we only did it for like one period, but when the exercise is done, it's done over weeks, where that's the only thing you and your partner are allowed to say is, "This is a spoon," "that is a spoon." And you have to use inflection to then communicate things back and forth. And when it's done, there are some people who claim that by the end, they are able to perfectly understand one another. That one man like told another about like the feelings he had for his dad after he died, that brought the other man to tears just saying those two things back and forth to one another.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I've had a lot of fun moments of getting immersed in games over the years, and I think a couple of them that really stand out for me is one was in L5R, which I've talked about a number of times on the show, but I love Legend of the Five Rings. I think it is one of my all-time favorite settings, precisely because it is so roleplay heavy and so combat light. Don't get me wrong, there is combat and there's tons of rules for it, but combat is so lethal in the L5R setting that you really have to avoid it unless you're willing to roll up another character, because one hit can be it. So, because it's samurais, and when you get cut with a katana and you don't have armor on, you die usually.
Wow.
But so because of those high stakes and because of the oppression of the setting, it's really easy to get into your character when everything in the world seems to be working against you. And that's a system that always stands out to me for getting really good immersion. The other, I'm going to shout out my adoptive sister, Kara, who ran a one-shot in my homebrew setting and had the gall to make me feel uncomfortable in my own setting. She ran.
Did you cry?
No, I was scared, I would say.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah,
good.
she ran
Okay.
a game called Famine in Ice Lock being a city in my setting. And it started off as a pretty normal adventure where we were trying to find a missing person. And as we were going on this hunt for them through the forest, things started getting weird and creepy. And so as we're like trapped out in this blizzard, she's doing a great job of describing it. The music's on point. Everything is so good. And then I said something, or I think it was my character joking, where I was like, I think we're going to die out here. And all of a sudden she goes, you hear back in your voice, going to die out here. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. Not one bit. So she had taken inspiration from the Wendigo and was basically having a Wendigo hunt us. And it was terrifying.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about raising the stakes? Because I think that's a really important point. In the L5R game, I'm imagining that like you don't have a lot of murder hobos. Like that's not really people aren't.
I mean, they don't live very long if you do.
Right. Like it's just sort of naturally sort of forces people in a good way into like,
Yes.
okay, this is serious. Like what we're doing matters. And I think that is a key part to immersion. And one of the things that I think is actually kind of detrimental is when I've heard DMs say to their players, like, I don't kill players or I don't kill characters or like that will never happen. Even if in their mind, they're going to say, I would like to avoid that as much as possible. Letting the players know that the stakes are real or feeling like they're real and feeling like this could happen, I think is a really important part of any game.
What I tell my players at the beginning is I don't kill characters meaninglessly.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't to say that if you go up to the Lord of the Land and spit in his face, he might have you killed. Like that is absolutely a thing that can happen. I generally, and that's all about having trust between player and DM, right?
Mm-hmm.
My players know that if I do something bad to them, generally speaking, it's because I have a storyline thing involved. On Sunday's game, one of my players was getting real mouthy with the big enemy that they were fighting, and they basically did a time shunt on her to get her out of the fight for a round. And the player specified that they send her back to like her most traumatic moment that led to her becoming a villain, kind of. And so she comes back like having just relived that moment. And then one of the other players starts getting mouthy with her. I'm like, all right, fair enough. And she cut his arm off. I mean, he made a roll for it to see if he could dodge out of the way and not get hit, but he failed the roll. And so she cut his arm off. And my player was a champ about it. He didn't complain. He didn't, get all withdrawn about it. He leaned into this moment of his character having his arm cut off because there's trust there between the player and the DM that we're going to do something with that. It's going to be interesting. Yes, Robbie, I know you pulled my character's arm off.
I love seeing when someone who is your player is DMing for someone else, passing the trauma that you gave to them onto somebody else.
To be fair, I cut my players off. You had a big dude pick up my arm, grab it, and pull it out of the socket and tear it off.
Same end result.
Yeah, it sure was.
I was going to say something, and I completely forgot what it was now.
Oh, that was brutal. Yeah, no.
What? Oh, right. Oh, so in a similar vein to the whole stakes and, when it comes to character death and stuff, what I always tell people is I will give you every chance that I reasonably can to save yourself. Because first of all, I don't want people. I like it when players take big swings, right?
Yeah.
When they make bold choices, and I don't want someone thinking, "Oh, well, if I try and do this, am I dead?" Like there isn't anything or any situation I will put you in where a single roll is going to remove your character from this game forever. There will always be a chance, whether that's resurrection in the future or a few different kinds of roles. Like, there will always be a chance, and if your character dies for some reason, it will be down to several decisions that you made and probably some bad dice rolls as well. Kali, your character last Friday decided to stay alone as someone else and who you knew was involved in a job with people who didn't seem very nice. And they came up to chat
to murder me.
Her character was like they basically was like, you get your shit together because we don't need you. So figure it out. And she's like, whoa, I'm not this person. And so they're like, oh, and you know about us now. So they just started stabbing her. And if it wasn't for the powerful person in the other room coming out to see what was going on, Kali, you would have just been it. You would have just died there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Ooh. Now I'm in prison instead.
And now you said something interesting that I wanted to key in, and I don't know if I misheard this or misinterpreted this, or if I'm just using it as a segue as a result. But we're going to do it. But you said something about being sent back to her most traumatic time. Someone did that to your NPC?
To the enemy they were fighting. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Because my question was going to be how, or I guess whether you do this, and I bet Laura, you do. How often do you employ the players to help you fill in a scene? So instead of giving them the description of something, maybe you give a very vague description and then ask them, what do you smell? What do you feel?
Yeah. One of the first DMs that I ever played with, his name is Kindly Cleric on Start Playing and TikTok, wonderful guy. And we were playing in a Humblewood campaign. And he said, all right, we're in this town of, I don't know, Everdell or something. And I was like, okay, I'm waiting for like, what happens in Everdell? What's he going to tell us? And then he said, all right, Laura, here's a town square. What are you doing? What building are you in? What are you up to? And I was like, oh, I'm figuring this out with you. And that was so cool because I think one of the big challenges, I don't know if you guys tell me, is it a big challenge with really experienced players? But with newer players, it's really hard, I think, for them to think about their backstory or their role within the game. A lot of new players are like, well, I'm just here with my character sheet. Yeah.
No. I think that's actually very normal for new players. I've talked about it before, but I think there is a degree of getting over the hurdle of realizing you're not going to be made fun of for telling a story and for role-playing. We get told way too early in life to stop doing make-believe and stop playing pretend, and that weighs on us. So it can take time to overcome those boundaries and those self-imposed boundaries and feel safe and comfortable at a table to put yourself out there and tell a story that you're interested in.
And pro tip, if someone at your table does make fun of you for something, that's just them letting you know early on that's not a good table and to leave.
I tell my players in every game that I run that we have a zero tolerance policy for making fun of someone trying to role play because it is hard. It is tough to put yourself out there. It should be applauded when you do. My big advice to new players, and I always tell them, is don't think about an entire backstory for your character. Give your character a thing. Give them a gimmick or a quirk or something about them that you think is entertaining, and watch as they just lean into that thing, and that's how they start building this first character.
I don't think you've watched it yet, Kali, but I'm pretty sure y'all have Dropout now. You need to make time to watch Never Stop Blowing Up. Jacob Wazowski's character in that started with, I want to make a guy who just says dang all the time.
That's it.
That's it. That's it.
That's the character.
And when you watch that campaign, there's a lot more to that character, but that's where it started, and it all grew out of there. Mm-hmm. I definitely need to learn to do that more. Where I tend to do it is in combat, and specifically when I know that there's a character who hasn't really had a chance to do a whole lot. Maybe they've been stunned, paralyzed, they just got counterspelled, or they had to use a bunch of movement to get there. So they haven't had a chance to do anything. Or maybe they're dying. Happens to Kali a lot.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about? In this moment, who are you most worried about? And we just had a friend of ours, a player who had played with us for a while, but ended up stepping away from it. The narrative and descriptive style of our kind of style of play wasn't really for them. But what I saw them struggle with was definitely something that I know a lot of new players struggle with. Where you might ask them, how does that manifest, that spell? How does that attack look? Oh, well, I hit him.
Right.
Okay. But get into it more. In fact, if anyone's listening to this and thinking, no, I don't really get it. What do you want me to say more than I swing my sword at them? Go watch Gladiator with Russell Crowe. Go and watch that. And when he's in the arena, when he's fighting, take a moment to really watch. Does every swing just look like, oh, he hit him? Every time he gets knocked down, what does it show? What do you think he's feeling? There's so much, even from round to round, that you can pack into a description besides just, oh, I hit him with my sword.
I play with an incredible role player who has really taught me how to do that. He plays a character named Dahlia, who I believe is, well, it's definitely undead, but maybe some form of warlock. And his descriptions, so Dahlia is always wearing a bridal gown. And when she attacks something, her hands often come off of her wrist. And he will describe how the hand falls to the ground and then scatters across, and you see sort of fire emerge from it as it turns and attacks the assailant. That type of thing, the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But now it becomes very inspirational. So I think you're right. Go watch movies and just pay attention. But yeah, also go watch professional or games on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, where people really are playing at that level. You'll level up immediately.
Magic's definitely, I think, a lot easier than martial related stuff. But if there's anyone who struggles with martial, specifically and I'm sure there's super cuts out there and compilations out there, go look up Liam O'Brien and Orem from Critical Role, who just plays a Battlemaster fighter. That's it. Just the most normal everyman class there is, and the descriptions that he puts into how he uses the sword, the shield, the maneuvers it's poetry. It's so good. All right. Give me some final thoughts here. Not even going to give you any sort of prompt, just your closing, your final thoughts on immersion.
DMs, immersing your players in what's happening is the difference between being good and great. It really is worth taking the time to immerse your players. And here's the brutal reality of that. There is no one-size-fits-all answer for that. Every table is different. Every player out there is immersed by different things. For some of them, it is the music. For some of them, it is dialogue. For some of them, it is the intensity of an encounter, a voice inside their head, a sexy tiefling that talks to them every now and then. You will learn as you get to know your players better what it is that wraps their attention. So be on the lookout for that. Look for the moments where no one at your table is looking away, when everyone has eyes on you and wants to know what's going to happen next, when people are asking questions. And also, a quick tip about that. We've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. When your players are making a lore check, if they are asking something about the world, always give them something. But if they meet the DC or meet it by a lot, say you'll give them a question about it to reflect what they want to know. Now you're getting their buy-in on what they think is interesting about it, not just the little list of things you're going to tell them. That's my big tip.
Laura?
I love that. I'm going to talk about it from the player side. I will say, don't be afraid to let go. Let it go. It will feel funny and funky and weird at first to speak in those funny voices or gesticulate in certain ways, but your table will love it. And in fact, a lot of people will admire you at that table for doing something that maybe they're too self-conscious to do. In a separate vein, maybe related, but I think that the killer of any role-playing game is players who are afraid to take bold action and afraid to meet the moment. The worst thing that can happen to any player, in my opinion, is not death. The worst thing that can happen is a really boring game because people do not engage their curiosity. They expect the DM to feed them the information. And I don't think that is the job of the DM. I think the job of the DM is to create a world where players want to get curious, but you have to be curious.
And I will tack onto there for players. If you feel like you have a hard time doing that, when you're creating your character, the thing you need to remember, I think above all else, your character should care about the world. Figure out what it is that your character cares about. Even if you're making an edgelord lone wolf, they care about something in that world besides themselves. If you can't answer that, it's going to be very, very hard to be curious about stuff. So care about the world. All right. So at the end of our show here, because not quite the end, as a cat walks in front of me.
Inspiration all around.
Come on, go. Only you get it because you're the only one here, Kali.
I get an inspo.
We have a little game we like to play, Am I the Asshole in Character Edition. So people basically send us their Am I the Asshole stories as their characters, not as players.
Okay.
So the first one is a little bit different than what we're used to. Am I the asshole for not really caring in Baldur's Gate 3?
Yes, you monster.
I killed the bard in BG3 that came to my camp, but that was a Dark Urge thing. I killed Lazelle because I found her annoying, and I left that goblin on the windmill spinning. So am I the asshole? Just another BG3 player.
Were they dark? Was that all Dark Urge?
I don't think the Lazelle thing probably was.
No!
Or the leaving the goblin on the windmill thing. I know somebody who killed Carlock because when they first met her, she was like aggressive towards them. And it's like, people are hunting her and you were hunting her. Like you had agreed to kill her for somebody. And they're like, nah, too much attitude.
Monster.
Yeah.
Monstrous.
Okay.
No. Yes, you're the asshole. Times 10.
All right, here's what I'm going to say, because I do think that's terrible. But get your murder hobo bullshit out in BG3 so that when you come to the table, you can actually like be a functioning player.
I will say, yeah, probably the asshole. Not for leaving the goblin or the whoever it was on the windmill. I'm pretty
Goblin,
sure
yeah, he's a dick.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who hasn't tried to romance Lazelle, though, should, because I think more than anybody else in the game, the way that she starts to treat and react to you when she realizes that she loves you will knock you on your ass.
Lazelle is such a good romance.
It's amazing.
It's so crazy, yeah.
Wait a minute. Can we talk about how to romance Astarion? Because I have never been able to do it.
Then I feel like you're better off because he's the worst.
You gotta not always accept his advances because then he gets kind of pissy about it. So yeah,
he's a tricky one.
He's like Jack in Mass Effect 2. If you ever play Mass Effect 2, it's like Jack. If you sleep with her right away, she hates you.
Complicated.
Yeah.
Also, don't let him become the ascended version because you do not like where that romance goes in that version.
Really?
Yeah, he gets. It's one of those like decisions where like as soon as you make the decision, the very first conversation after he becomes an ascended vampire, you go, "I goofed. Should have done that.
Shouldn't have done that.
Nope, that's not going to work out. That one's not going to pay dividends."
Do you think that there's like any character? Robbie, tell me if you got to get the hook and like pull me off the podcast at this point. But I am curious, is there any character that you do feel is totally expendable in BG3?
See, I think that it's difficult because I think that all of them are written so well because I can see arguments for why everybody who hates a certain character hates them, right? Like I'm a Shadowheart guy, but like almost right off the rip, she tells you like, "Hey, look, my god's a dark god who wants to do bad things, and like this is what I was meant for, so that's what I'm gonna do."
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that's just like, "All right, well, fuck you then. How about that?" Whereas I'm like, "No, honey. Oh, I'm gonna fix you." And guess what? I did.
The best is if you are a worshiper of Selûne and you basically get two people trying to corrupt the other one, and then they just fall in love instead. It's the best trope ever.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So I think that all of them, except for Will. Will is a perfect cinnamon bun in every way.
So Will is a pure cinnamon bun, but I also think that Will's the most expendable of all of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he's the one who I feel like they did not do enough for in the third act, where so much of his stuff just doesn't feel like it pays off.
Which is like that's his city. That's
right.
where he's from, right?
That's what I mean. You
so,
really
like,
thought it would have paid off
That's kind of
more.
crazy.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I got to Baldur's Gate and like finished like the lower city area, and then my ADHD was like, "You need to go play something else." And I haven't gone back yet after 300 hours in a single save file. And of course, when I go back, I'm not just going to pick up where I left off. I'm going to start all over again.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll never beat Baldur's Gate.
Karlach is my bae. I love her forever, and you'll never convince me otherwise.
No. All right, our second Am I the Asshole? Am I the asshole for hiding my, at the time, new magical tattoo thing from my allies? So I live in Sharn, which has always been a shithole, but recently a bit more than usual. I've joined a group that's working to make things better by preventing the gangs from doing more harm to innocents and standing up against the corrupt Dragonmark houses. A little while ago, I woke up to a cold burn on my back, which turned out to be an aberrant Dragonmark. It let me do some new magic, and it was super cool, but it didn't mess with my health or anything, so I just didn't tell anyone about it. Later, my girlfriend made me show a famous wizard guy the mark to make sure I was okay, and he said it was the mark of the supposedly wiped out, death-marked house. I still didn't see what the big deal was, so I didn't tell him. Is this Bella? Is this Aaron?
It was Aaron. It
Oh
wasn't
my
her
God.
playing Bella, but
Right,
it was
okay,
Aaron.
Great, cool.
Yeah.
Then, much later on, we found out that the marks were used to hold souls and that my mark actually had a soul in it.
Yeah,
This
sure
was a
did.
big deal, and I think some of my allies were a tad annoyed I didn't share earlier, as we could have potentially figured some shit out a bit sooner. In my defense, though, I grew up with no money and no support, so when shit happens, you ignore it until you can't because there's no way to fix it. So it's not really my fault that all my rich friends can't understand that, right? So, am I the asshole, broke-ass bitch? Can't believe that I called... Aaron, as a player, has this thing of like, oh, is something bad happening? No, not yet. Kick it down the road.
Yeah, Aaron is very much a kick it down the road kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
to
then that tracks.
hilarious extent sometimes.
Yep.
No, I don't think you were the asshole in this case. Like, obviously, getting a death marked tattoo on your back is not great, but that is your business. Like,
How long did it take before she found out that there were like souls?
that
in
wasn't
it?
until very near the end of the game.
And then she
And
told
once she
people.
found out, she told people. Yeah.
Okay, that's
when
fair.
That's when she finally confessed it.
Because if it's just like, oh yeah, I have a weird tattoo on my back. Oh, what does it mean? Oh, I don't know.
Now, admittedly, one of their opponents was the death marked house, so maybe that wasn't as good that she didn't mention it at that point. But no, I don't think Ash was the asshole for that one.
Okay.
I
She
don't
didn't
think so either. Players are
deliberately try
allowed.
to hide it, did she?
No, she definitely did that.
Oh.
But I think players should be allowed to, or characters should be allowed to have secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I don't think that that's just on its own bad. And this one doesn't sound like it completely broke the game or necessarily.
What about in character? Put yourself in this party, right? You find out that your party members had a death mark tattoo for like 2 months and they're only just now telling you. How do you feel about that?
I want to understand their motives. If
The
I
motive
felt,
is I couldn't do anything about it, so I didn't
Yeah.
say anything.
well, I mean, I think that's okay. I think that's valid.
Okay.
Look, she has poverty trauma. I play a character that also has poverty trauma. I totally get it. I've played 2 in a row that have had poverty trauma.
Yep.
So, no, I come from a family also where you didn't complain about things that were wrong because that meant going to the doctor. So if you could tough it out, you toughed it out. That's how we grew up in my family. So I actually get what she's saying.
Wait, is that not just how everyone in the world is?
No, actually, as it turns out, families that have money and good insurance, when you don't feel well, you just go to the doctor, which has taken Sarah a long time to pound into my head.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. Laura, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. This is the time where we give to you, the floor is yours, to let people know where to find you, if you have any projects or anything you'd like them to go and check out, anything upcoming.
Okay. Thank you for having me. This was really fun. The time flew by. So first of all, please come find me on TikTok at DiceWhisperer, where I'm talking all about RPG content. My whole thing is about uplifting our community. I love all different kinds of RPGs. I love people who play different kinds of things. And I am not a big fan of the Council of Neckbeards that tries to gatekeep and shame people for liking certain things or not doing things the way they were done 40 years ago. So if you don't want that vibe, come hang out with me. The other thing I'm working on is I am working on bringing role-playing games into businesses as a team building activity. So if anyone is interested in that, you can go to my website, onceuponaroll.com, and learn more.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, and we will definitely find a reason to bring you on again in the future. As for us, if this isn't your first time listening, you know what we're about. And if it is your first time here, besides this podcast, we also do a ton of homebrew stuff over on our Patreon, which includes, by the time this comes out, 1,000+ magic items. I think 15 subclasses. When this comes out, our Ghostwalker fighter should be up there. We also have 2 species as well. An Oath of Shadow Paladin recently, which is not just Batman. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Cloaks and Capes TTRPG. And please, if you've listened and you've gotten this far, leave us a rating or a review or a comment wherever it is that you're listening to this. It really helps boost the discoverability, helps other people find us. And until next time, keep watching, keep listening.
The Cloaks and Capes podcast is created by the support of its listeners and generous Patreon donors. Special thanks to our myth makers and legends, Heartslot, Dolvik, Celtic Crow, Darkflux, Gamergal, Tater Thoughts, Chili, Capelli, and Cuta. Views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts. Editing and production by Aaron Pillen and music provided by Aidan Hageland. If you want to support the Cloaks and Capes podcast, check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/cloaksandcapes and check us out on Threads and Instagram at Cloaks and Capes TTRPG.